Hi, everyone. I hope that you are self-distancing or social distancing, rather, is being kind to you. I know this is probably a strange time for all of us, having to do our coursework this way and everything, but here we are, doing our duty to keep everyone healthy. So, um, today we're going to talk a little bit more about your literature review. Now, if you have been in our course, hopefully you have, in our readings section, there is a folder here for week 10, and there are a couple of videos in there that you should watch regarding, what a literature review is and some examples of what a literature review should look like. So today, though, I want to focus a little bit more on the process of putting together or organizing your literature review. So if you go into our assignment folder, so assignments over here, research paper all parts, and go to the literature review, which is step 3, you'll notice there are a few documents in here. First of all, there's the prompt for the literature review, which you should review. I'm not going to go over that ad nauseum here on video because you have it available and can read through it yourself. There's a sample literature review in here. This has a short sort of introductory section, just like a paragraph that kind of gives the reader a little bit of context around the project that is being done. And then it goes into the literature review, which here I have called Review of Scholarship. If you read through this, it should give you a pretty good idea of what a literature review should look like. In addition, you also have those resources that are available in that week 10 reading. I also have that secondary link that's in there. If you copy and paste that into your web browser, there are a few examples of literature reviews in that as well. So you can look at those to help you out. The thing that I want to focus on, though, is there's this secondary link here. It's a document that's called the Literature Review Source Organization Sheet, or the Literature Organization Worksheet. And if you click and bring this up, what you'll get is this document right here. Now, what this document is meant to do is to help you organize your work, in essence. So all the sources that are on your annotated bibliography that you've been working through, you're going to need to find a way to organize the information that's on there for you to present within your literature review proper. So this sheet is created sort of to help you facilitate that process. Now, for all the sources you have, obviously you should have at least 10 so far because of your annotated bibliography. But by the time you get to your final version of your project paper, of course, if you're doing primary research, the prompt lets you know you need between 12 and 16 sources. If you're not doing any sort of primary research, which applies to maybe 1 or 2 people in the class, then you need 16 to 20. So here, what you're going to do for your literature review, as you hopefully you've listened to the video that I put up before that sort of explains what a literature review is, but just a sort of short and sweet explanation to catch anyone up who hasn't done those yet or just needs a quick refresher. A literature review is, in essence, a look at, or where you'll write about what has already been written about the topic that you are exploring for your research paper. You might also be touching upon any work that's been done on the periphery of your own research paper as well. So sometimes whatever your research topic is, there might be someone who's written on it before, and maybe you're just bringing something new to the table. So basically you'll want to talk about anything that you have found that scholars have written about as pertains to your topic, whatever's been written previously. In addition, You might have maybe a theoretical framework that someone used for something else, but then you are going to now try to apply it to your own research, for example. So it might be something sort of peripheral but related to your work as well. So one of the big problems is trying to figure out how to take all of this information, your 12 to 20 sources, depending on the kind of research project you're doing and how many sources you need. Trying to find a way to organize them and present them in a sort of meaningful way to your audience can be a little bit challenging. So this worksheet really allows you some leeway in putting this together and kind of being able to visually see how things fit together. So one of the first things I would recommend that you do is for each of the sources that you already have in the gray boxes over here for source 1, for example, put your APA format citation. So it might be like Smith, comma, title of the work, etc. So fill in the APA formatted reference, right? So what you would put on your reference page, I would just put here, okay? Now, the other thing that you're going to need to do is figure out what are some themes that you see come out of or that make sense for the research that you've done. So if I'm doing a research project, for example, on transmedia adaptations, I might have some information about storytelling, for example. I might have some sources that are about YouTube / social media. I might have some sources that cover, let's see, oops. Sorry. Yeah. I might have some film slash TV studies, etc. Okay, so you might depending on what you're doing for your own research, you might have more than 3. You might, but I'm guessing most people will have at least 2, but maybe up to about 6 themes that you might pull out of your work. So then for all of the sources that you have over here, what you'll be going through and doing is filling out. So let's say that Smith, this source here, Smith, A.A. Smith or whatever, let's pretend that this work talks about YouTube / social media. So here in this box, so at the cross section of Smith and YouTube / social media, I'm going to give a short explanation of how this work addresses this theme, and then also how it applies to my overall work. Okay, so I might say something like, Smith talks about the emergence of social media as a new medium for artists to use for their creative endeavors. Oops. Now, depending on the source, you might find that your source only talks about one of your themes, okay? You might find, however, that some of your sources talk about more than one of your themes. So maybe I have another source, let's say Brown, comma, B, title, etc. So again, we're just kind of pretending I have another source here. And let's say Brown talks about storytelling and film and TV studies. So I might say something like, Brown focuses on the construction of narrative in Western contexts. And then maybe Brown also talks about how storytelling is done in film / TV studies. So maybe I'll do something like, Brown describes how stories are structured for both film and TV audiences. Okay, so again, just depending on what you have, you might have some sources that only touch upon one of your themes. You might have some sources that touch upon all of them. So you're going to want to sort of fill in how these things worked together, basically. Okay. I'm sorry, how each of your sources go about addressing each of the themes that you have. And again, they may or may not touch upon all of them. So, but what you'll have here as you fill this out is once you get more and more sources, you'll be able to see with your themes kind of which ones talk about what, and it will sort of help you create or devise a way to organize your work. So if I have, let's say I have Brown here, and then let's say I have like 2 or 3 other sources that talk about just storytelling more broadly, I might organize my literature review to talk about storytelling first, and I'll bring up Brown, I'll bring up whatever other sources talk about storytelling, contextualize those sources in terms of what they had to say and how it does or does not apply to what I am about to talk about in my own research paper. And the same is true then I'll go of the other ones. So then I'll go on to the next theme and talk about all the sources that I have that talk about YouTube/social media and what they have to say about that topic. And then the same is true then of each of the other themes that I have. Okay. So basically what this allows you to do is sort of visualize how these sources come together and how you should go about organizing your paper. Now, I will say when you have if you have several sources that talk about more than one of the themes, you will probably then just mention that source more than one time. So in my paper, you should organize it by theme, not necessarily by the source. Okay. So first I'm going to talk about storytelling as one section of my literature review. Okay. So it might be a couple of paragraphs depending on how I want to go about talking about the storytelling. It might be just one paragraph, etc. But then I'm going to take that time to sort of go through and synthesize the information around storytelling with all the sources that mention or addressed this theme. Okay. Now, that means that you might have some sources that you are going to mention more than once, right? So Brown right here, right? So they're going to be brought up in the storytelling section in whatever capacity is relevant to their to my work rather. So however, Brown's storytelling theme is brought up, and, however I need to address that to talk about my own research, how it applies to my research, or maybe how it's different from my research, whatever the case may be. And then Brown will then come up again when I talk about film and TV studies within my paper, right? So you'll come back to that source. So don't feel like if you've mentioned that source one time already that you can't mention them again. Remember, it's more about talking about the substance of the arguments they're making, or the nature of the information that they have, or whatever results they may have had in their study, and trying to sort of tease out how their works apply to or support or challenge or whatever the case may be in relation to your own study. Okay. So really when you go about filling this out, just make sure that you're creating some compelling or meaningful buckets or themes, if you will. It might take you a little bit of time to sort of suss out, but making sure that you have really good, solid themes to go throughout really helps. So to create or figure out what your themes are, you're going to have to kind of look at your own study and try and figure out what are the categories of information you need to relay to your audience for them to get a good understanding of the background information that will be needed to understand the project that you are about to talk about, right? What kinds of work have been done in the past? What kinds of theoretical frameworks have been used? What did those other scholars have to say about those things? And how are you either going to add additional context to those themes, or how are you going to challenge perhaps some of the information that other scholars have produced? So really this worksheet I hope will be helpful to you in terms of figuring out the kinds of information you have and how you might go about working through that information to put it your own into your own work. So hopefully this is helpful. If you have questions about this, feel free to let me know, and you can email me if you have a good question. I might answer it for the whole class. Don't worry, I'll keep you guys' questions anonymous. I'll just tease out the basic essence of the question that you have, so that way I can share with the class what the answer may be. If there are smaller questions, obviously I'll just respond to you each individually. So, okay, so like I say, look over this sheet, try and fill it out for your own. I mean, I'm not going to collect this from you, but it has been my experience in teaching this class that those who take the time to fill out this worksheet and really try to keep their information organized, it tends to be very, very helpful to those who use it. And I can usually tell based on how well a paper is organized or not in terms of their literature review, whether or not they have taken the time to do this step. Largely because those who don't, their literature reviews tend to be a little less well manicured, if you will, meaning there's some disorganization in the way that they present the information. So this is really helpful for those who take the time to use it. So hopefully it will be helpful to you as well. Like I said, email if you have any questions, and make sure that you look over the other literature review information from the week 10 folder. There's also a video that I put up that explains how to do a survey in the program Qualtrics. So make sure that you look at that as well. That's also going to be in the week 11 readings folder, which is where you will have found the link to this video as well. Okay, so let me know if you have questions, and I will talk to you soon.